I have put together a supercut of the rest of my family's vacation to Osaka, Japan, and that's because the rest of the trip felt like we were speedrunning through different attractions. And that's because we were constantly getting up and down the coach, visiting and hiking to different shrines and different places. I didn't get to say much about the Ise Grand Shrine, and that's also partially because videography wasn't allowed. But right beside the shrine is this street. It's a shopping street with replica wooden houses, and there you'll find plenty of eateries and places to find food that you can actually buy back for your colleagues, for your family members. Shortly after that, we headed to an oyster farm to have our lunch. And this is where we got to witness how the oysters were being cultivated and being scrubbed and being prepared as well. Lunch was an assortment of different kinds of oysters prepared in different styles, and probably I would say that this was one of the best meals on the entire trip. After lunch, we got to stretch our legs and we visited Onigajo, which is a World Heritage Site. It's more or less about a cliff formation by the side of the sea, and supposedly it was a place that was rife with piracy in the past. It's a pity that the skies were completely washed out while we were there. The tour guide made us hike to a certain point, but beyond that, only the younger members of the tour group went because it was pretty treacherous. The next attraction is one which I would rather not have visited in hindsight. Prior to the trip, I was actually very interested to find out from a Japanese perspective how they would defend the controversial practice of whaling. What is not documented here is the museum portion of this site, where there were dioramas explaining the practice in the past. However, most of the site has been dedicated to a tiny aquarium as well as a lagoon containing local dolphins and whales. I was told that there was a conservation aspect to this entire place, but I highly doubt so, and that this chance to feed the dolphin was nothing more than a tourist trap. Dolphins and whales are highly intelligent animals, and in their natural habitat, they would cover vast distances of rivers, seas and oceans. I guess the closest analogy that I can give you would be that of training a large dog in a small room, a toilet perhaps. I debated for quite a while whether to keep the footage, but ultimately decided that it was important to have some public education. So while we didn't know better when we signed up for the tour package, now you know. And if you are shopping for a tour to bring your elderly parents on, do keep a lookout and avoid visiting this whale museum. While I have no idea how well the dolphins are being treated by the trainers and keepers, but on the whole, keeping dolphins in captivity is detrimental for their health and is highly controversial. There was the obligatory dolphin performance, and I remarked back then that it's not too different from the lives that we lead, having to work just to earn our keep. So if you have already made it a point not to go on elephant rides, this is yet one more thing you can add to that list when it comes to animal tourism. That's it for this segment, and we are going to go back to happier topics. Here you see us ascending a hill to make it to the summit to see a Shinto shrine as well as a Buddhist temple. Along the way you will see stalls selling items made of Nachi black stone. It's not the steepest of climbs, but seniors would appreciate the hiking sticks which are provided at the base of the hill. There are also plenty of stalls selling various souvenirs as well as chilled drinks. The most memorable part of the hike was actually our tour guide, who kept saying that we were nearly at the top, almost at the top, and insisting that he was not lying, all in the name of encouraging the seniors to make it to the very summit without giving up. As to whether the view at the summit is actually worth the climb, I'll leave that up to you to decide when I show you the footage later on. For us, it's actually a pity that because we are with a tour group, we were literally just rushing from point A to point B, and we didn't really have time to explore the culture and the history of the temple. Personally, I would have wanted to figure out the symbolism of the religion, as well as appreciate the architecture a little bit more. There's a place to obtain divination sticks, which my wife and I did not do because we are Christians. And there's also an old camphor tree which has a hole in its base for people to pass through. You're supposed to write your wish, hold on to it, and then squeeze through the hole. Like the other Shinto shrines we visited, there's also a place selling charms. Most unexpectedly, we also saw members of the Japanese self-defense force climbing up with jerry cans on their back. Closer to the Nachi Falls, you will find the Buddhist temple, which you can distinguish by its more austere exterior and more somber colors. And there's no mistaking the distinct Chinese influence on the architecture here as well. Walking towards the precipice, you will be able to see the Nachi Falls, which unfortunately is a little bit obscured by atmospheric haze during the summer. And less than 10 minutes later, after having taken our individual snapshots, we were being rushed down to head on to our next destination. More than half the tour group opted to not ascend and were actually waiting at this cafe. Up next, we would actually head to the base of the Nachi Waterfall to get up close and personal with nature. And yes, once again, a short hike was required. Taken in totality with the two temples, as well as the falls itself, I would say that it's worth making a trip here. And it's best if you have the luxury of time to just stand and admire. While I did not manage to get any footage of the pit stops along the highway, I did manage to get you a little bit of footage of barn swallows and their nest. This day would come to a close with the tour group visiting a couple more rock formations by the sea. It was nice and windy here, and there were other tourists who actually brought food to have a picnic. All this walking reminded me of the need to take care of my health as well as my joints, and that if I want to travel, I should do it while I'm yet young. A short drive down the coast and we found ourselves at Senjojiki, which translates to 1,000 tatami mats. In my opinion, it is more interesting than Sandanbeki, the cliff which we just visited, because of its barren, moonscape-like surface and the fact that you get much closer to the waves. There were far more younger domestic tourists here as well. And I guess they are here because this place is Instagrammable. And that's something you should consider if it's your thing. On the way back to the hotel, we stopped by the side of the road to sneak a glimpse of Engetsu Island with its naturally occurring arch. The next day, we headed back to civilization and kick-started the day with a visit to a soy sauce factory. And this part of Japan is famous because it is the birthplace of soy sauce, which a monk brought over from China. It's interesting enough because you get to see the vats in which the soy sauce are being fermented. The guided tour is brief on the whole, and you will see videos and explanations of how the process is carried out, and there's also a place where you get to stand and watch the workers work using the hydraulic press and other machinery down below. And like a good tourist attraction, there's also a photo op where you get to hold on to bamboo sticks and prod at a vat of soy sauce. And you get to wear panda hats while doing so, because pandas are emblematic of Wakayama. They are there on loan from China. And everywhere you go throughout the factory, you are reminded that this is not just some mass-produced soy sauce. Rather, they take pride in its small batch artisanal products. In particular, this company, the Marushin company, has been around since 1881 and is a family business that is currently being managed by the 5th generation. As part of our package, we were each given a bottle of soy sauce to bring home, and most excitingly, we got to try soy sauce flavoured ice cream. And it was delicious, even more so than any kind of salted caramel ice cream that you can find here in Singapore. The complexity of the soy sauce flavour paired very well with the vanilla ice cream base. Once everyone was done buying their soy sauce and visiting the restroom, it was another half an hour drive to learn more about Wakayama's history. And when I say learn about history, I mean that very loosely, because once again, it was just another time where we were going to hike to a location, take a snapshot and call it a day. The Wakayama Castle is situated near the city, and this time round we did not buy tickets to enter and learn more about samurais and ninjas. When you see bamboo sticks, that means more hiking. And if you're wondering, there's another receptacle at the end of the hike where you get to put the bamboo sticks. By this point of time, I was really wondering how would tourism actually change when millennials become the dominant group with all the spending power. The castle is elegant looking, but I wouldn't say that it was worth the hike up. But that might be a little bit unfair considering that we did not get to enter and learn about its history. It's definitely a touristy place and not somewhere that's off the beaten path, because you will find people dressed up as ninjas and their role is to be there to help take pictures as well as to have pretend sword fights. After this, we headed to the Rinku Premium Outlets where we spent quite a number of hours before ending the day at Shinsekai where we had our dinner, making our own DIY takoyaki. I would highly recommend visiting Shinsekai instead of Dotonburi, especially if you are terrified of crowds. The next day we were up bright and early again because we were visiting a river and a bamboo grove. Compared to the rock formations that we visited by the coast, Arashiyama is swarming with tourists. Behind me while I was filming the river is actually a gigantic coach bay. But I'll spare you the sight of that and let you enjoy the sound of rushing water. Having gotten past the bridge, it was time for our next touristy activity, which was to take a riverboat ride up the Honzu River. It may surprise you, but this was one of the most enjoyable parts of the trip, and I think that it's partially because it helped us to get away from the maddening crowd, and also because we were surrounded by nature, and the guide informed us that it was a lot more beautiful when it was autumn or when it was winter. Nevertheless, all the greenery by the banks was still very, very beautiful and mesmerizing. Our boat was propelled forward by an elderly boatman who used the bamboo pole to push against the riverbed. This meant that the boat traveled slowly in an S-shaped pattern. As beautiful and idyllic as the scenery was, it could not go on forever, and at a certain juncture, the boatman had to U-turn the boat and head back to the starting point. So enjoy this sight while you can, because after this is the bamboo grove. While the bamboo grove actually runs parallel to the river, you actually need to hike quite a fair bit of a distance before you get there. It's beautiful but overrun with people, as you can see here. Arashiyama will be our last brush with nature because after this we were headed back to the concrete jungle. After taking our lunch at the mess hall near the coach bay, we headed to the Kuromon Ichiba market. It's more of a food street though, with plenty of options for grilled seafood or beef and even fresh fruits being sold. Everything looked very appetizing, but we were just too full from our lunch earlier on. There's even a stall selling fugu, pufferfish sashimi. I was highly tempted by a croissant stall near the entrance, but didn't pull the trigger in the end. Once our jaunt here at this 200-year-old market was over, we were thrown into the heart of Osaka's shopping district to find our own dinner. You are surrounded by dining options everywhere you look. And the canals are picturesque, although it was a pity that I could not stay till it was night. Of course, no trip to Dotonburi would be complete without taking a picture with the Glico running man. We also tried to visit a Don Donkey, which is known as Don Quixote here, but it was really very narrow and crowded. There are also tourist barges which ply their trade up and down the canal. More specifically, if you want to shop, you would need to head into the Shinsaibashi shopping street, which is sheltered. Outside the street, you will find the Glico running man, as well as beggars and buskers. While we were there, we got to witness the performance by a beatboxer and a glass juggler. Honestly, it was kind of meh. And that's it. That marks the end of our guided tour because the next day will be our free and easy. I apologize that I did not cover much food because I wanted to be able to eat in peace with my family. Till the next trip, I'll see you.